On August the 10th, 2018, we should have been listening.
The people say, what do you do? What are you doing to play? Man, first of all, I have to know the quality of my players, I know that, but also I have to know the way the opponent is going to play.
Let me explain. What do you think when you hear the term number 8? The position of number 8, also known as a box-to-box midfielder, is something that has been transformed, tweaked, and even bastardized by iconic teams and apex managers. I want to tell you why the 2023-24 season will be about one number, the number 8. So, as for every story, it requires a protagonist, but who is it? Step forward. So I'm calling Pep, I'm going to call him Josep Guardiola Sala. Yeah, an avant-garde footballing brain with his subtlety, intellect and philosophical approach. On February the 1st, 2016, Guardiola signs for Manchester City and the first domino in this story falls. Guardiola's innovative approach at Man City is received with mixed opinions from the outside footballing world. His first action was to abandon the idea of the 10. The first midfield he ever deployed was David Silva as the left-sided 8, Fernandinho at the base, and Kevin De Bruyne sitting parallel to Silva on the right-hand side. At the time, this was seen as quite a big change. His non-traditional stationing of KDB and David Silva as 2 8s was something that was lambasted when it didn't work. This did not stop Pep. Had Pep not done what he did after this season, the entire landscape of the Premier League as we know it could have been incredibly different. And here's why. After a season of playing Pep Guardiola's unconventional style of football, Man City were at a juncture, finishing third in the league, 15 points behind leaders Chelsea. The persistence of Pep didn't waver though, as Manchester City became centurions. At the heart of this team were the very same 8 he had used in his first match in charge. The pair demonstrated the value of progressive 8s, putting up 44 goal contributions between them in the Premier League. This demonstrated the value of thinking outside the box when it came to abandoning conventional midfield roles and became the second domino in number 8s being radicalised. These actions have changed the way we view midfielders to this day. But what we have to remember here is that everything within football has an expiry date. With the level of analytics, analysis and planning teams put in these days, it had to end. Step forward Mr. Jurgen Klopp. He came along and he destroyed this way of thinking with new ideas that belittled Pep's style. This is how he did it. His combative and aggressive approach saw the number 8 redefined again. During the 2019-20 season, Liverpool blew the league away with their high energy and industrious approach. The fulcrum of this side was the midfield. You know, you had Wijnaldum and Jordan Henderson being the bedrock of the team with their hard-working approach. It fragmented the idea that a team had to have number 8s who were the pinnacle of the approach. Henderson and Wijnaldum's selfless approach saw those around them flourish. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson came away with 31 goal contributions between them that season. A huge part of this was down to the number 8s becoming off-the-ball facilitators, with Trent and Robertson going forward whilst Wijnaldum and Henderson covering that space. But that didn't last long either, because Arteta then comes along and revolutionises the way we view an 8 with a specific player that we could have imagined being so successful in that role. Arteta's work with this player destroyed the idea that a player is born an 8. The redemption of Granit Xhaka is demonstrative of so many things. Firstly, the quality of Arteta as a coach, but it also shows something very important. Players can learn. Players can adapt. Players can rediscover themselves as something no one believed that they could be. This completely reconstructed how we view players and what we believe is possible. Check this out. We've got 2 graphics here, and they may be the 2 most important graphics you're going to see in this video. The first is from Mikel Arteta's first full season in charge of Arsenal, 2020-2021. The second is from last season. The reconstitution of a player can't happen overnight, but what Arteta did with Xhaka within the space of 18 months is one of the most meaningful tactical changes we have seen in the Premier League within the last 10 years, I'd say. If you disagree, let me know in the comments down below. And if there's a better one, let me know, we can do a video on it. The first graphic shows that Xhaka was receiving the ball frequently, but almost exclusively within the middle third. The next image shows how he was less recurrent in possession, but was, importantly, further forward. And why is this important? Well, because it was one of the key Arteta innovations that created the title-challenging team of last season. But it also showed that an 8 isn't necessarily something that you're born into. This change may single-handedly save the careers of tens of players, if not hundreds. It could cost a few as well. Meanwhile, in Manchester, Pep is about to unveil a tactical change that could reshape football for the foreseeable future. You little scamp, Pep! Inverted fullbacks. Felt like the key to everything Pep was about at Manchester City, but Pep's judgment and nous redefined Manchester City's approach, but also how the number 8s play. These heat maps are important to understand where football is heading next season. They're from the FA Cup final, which Man City, of course, won. During the match, Gundogan and KDB were involved in both goals, scoring and assisting them. The slightly asymmetric yet advanced roles both of these players had in this game could be a key marker as to how many teams play next season, as they try to emulate this style of play. And I'm going to tell you exactly who they are in just a minute. Combined, Gundogan and KDB had a total of 106 touches between them in the final. This is an important stat that opens the door for something special, because this stat shows that an 8 has developed into a player that doesn't necessarily need to be someone who is constantly involved in build-up, and are now seen as players who do their best work in the final third. And this is essentially how Xhaka rediscovered himself at Arsenal. Now, we've only seen Manchester City do this to this extent, but these next two teams may be building towards this ideology during the transfer window with the signings that they've made. First up, Liverpool. The midfield acquisitions made by Liverpool demonstrate a rebuild is happening. Not only will it be a rebuild, though, it's also going to be a complete restructure of how they play. The intent shown to bring in both McAllister and Dominic Szoboszlai for £100 million demonstrates how important they feel it is to implement this way of playing. When you take a step back at this and look at it for what it really is, it is remarkable. Jurgen Klopp. Remember Jurgen Klopp from earlier in the video? A manager who built Liverpool's success on a contradictory approach to Pep Guardiola's football is now spending millions upon millions to assimilate the tactics that won Manchester City a treble last season. And then there's Arsenal. With Arsenal's recruitment, are we going to say that Arteta is copying Pep, or Arteta is just being Arteta? The signing of Kai Havertz puts this really into focus and puts it up for debate in regard to this exact claim. On one hand, there is a claim to be made that Arteta will do a similar thing that he did with Xhaka to Havertz. Conversely, you could claim that the deployment of 2 8s who act as 10s is a Pep Guardiola-derived idea. Copycat! But the important thing to remember is that without Xhaka proving that a player can be redefined into a modern 8, Kai Havertz may never have signed for Arsenal. So Chelsea fans, you've kind of got Xhaka to thank for this window. Sticking with Arsenal, the signing of Declan Rice has to come into this too. A player who was signed because of how good he was as an 8 for West Ham may not play as an 8 next season for Arsenal. This is how Arsenal's midfield could look next season. Declan Rice signed to play at 6 because of his performances as an 8. Kai Havertz played as a striker last year and looks like he'll be an 8 next season. And then Martin Odegaard, who signed as a 10 but is now one of the best 8s in the league. Their entire midfield is an embodiment that the 8 is always at the heart of a team in one way or another. But are there any actual true 8s, or are the best ones all in other positions? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you're still watching this by this point in the video, hopefully you've got something from it. So we're trying something different here. Let me know if you are enjoying it by hitting that subscribe button and of course hitting that like button for me. But there are so many more clubs who are involved in this surge, and well, here they are. Manchester United. Erik Ten Hag has already brought in Christian Eriksen during his time, but he has also now brought in Mason Mount, who looks very likely to be starting as an 8 for Manchester United next season. The determination shown to put an 8 at the top of their shopping list over a striker shows how important that position has become, but also shows how important it may be next season. It's also maybe a link to a disciple of Pep, with Erik Ten Hag previously working for Bayern Munich B. Newcastle United. The introduction of Tonali is massive for Newcastle on a few different fronts, and this is why, with Willock and Joe Linton fresh off the back of exceptional seasons playing mostly as, yep, you've guessed it, 8s, Newcastle still opted to sign what they feel is a world-class 8, and this shows that this market is extremely competitive at the minute, with number 8s from across Europe getting pinched by Premier League sides. From Newcastle's perspective, this signing could change their way of playing completely. This is what could happen. Tonali is a player that can operate as an 8 within a double pivot, as he showed in the Champions League last season. Couple that up with Eddie Howe's love for Atletico, and there seems to be one possible conclusion here. Newcastle are gearing up to play a 4-4-2. Chelsea, similar to Manchester United, the 8 position could become Chelsea's primary focus, despite having a player that they've just sold to someone else to play as an 8. But it certainly seems to be the primary focus in terms of the inbound players for Chelsea in the next few weeks of the transfer window. There's one player that feels essential to Pochettino's team next season, and that player is Moises Caicedo. Roberto De Zerbi is a manager who also places emphasis on his 8s. This has led to Caicedo being admired by multiple Premier League clubs, with Arsenal and Chelsea being the primary suitors. But Chelsea's interest and willingness to pay such a high fee shows how Premier League clubs feel like they can't succeed without a high-grade 8. Tottenham. Ange is another disciple of Pep's school of football and will implement very similar processes into his team's way of playing. This could mean the revival of someone like Basuma, who thrived in a similar style at Brighton, but it could also mean something huge is on the way from Maddison, which is what you would expect because they've just signed him. With the 8s in Ange's system having unparalleled attacking importance, the system becomes almost totally reliant on quality in that area, and more specifically, attacking end product. Therefore, Maddison's skill set becomes vital for Tottenham this season. A player often perceived as a 10 could be the most individually important 8 in the Premier League next season because of exactly this. But I think the big question here, of course, is that what if you don't like 8s? And if you don't like 8s and they're going to be everywhere in the Premier League this year, then maybe you want to watch other football. And if you do, then, well, you're going to need a VPN. But fortunately, Surfshark's got you covered. What is Surfshark? I hear you scream at me. Well, they're the sponsor of today's video, but they're also a virtual private network, a VPN for short. And that VPN, virtual private network, it keeps your online data safe by encrypting all of the data between your device and the internet. This is crucial when using public Wi-Fi, as it keeps you safe, keeps those cyber criminals well away, at bay you might say. With the Surfshark VPN, you can change your real location to any location around the world, over 3,200 servers in over 100 countries. Yeah, I thought I was going to burp. I did. So this means that you can access new content by exploring, Netflix libraries of Japan, USA, Australia, loads of countries, over 100. But also, let's say you're on holiday, which you might be for the start of the season, and you can't watch your favourite sporting event, or you can if you've got Surfshark, because you can change your IP address back to the UK and you can tuck into some Sky Sports or BBC iPlayer, or the other way around. If you want to watch some foreign leagues but they're not available in the UK, just change your IP address to a different location and you're good to go. Masking your IP address is essential in becoming private online. A VPN ensures your city, country, and download history isn't linked to your identity. And Surfshark's clean web feature blocks ads, phishing attempts, tracking, and malware, allowing you to surf the web safely. And the final thing that sets Surfshark apart and provides even more value for you guys is that you can use Surfshark's VPN on unlimited devices. So if you currently don't have a VPN, it just makes sense for you to have one to watch what you want safely wherever you want to watch it. So take a look at the link in the description. That will take you to the Surfshark website, where you can get yourself 3 months extra for free right now by using my code Allcott. ALLCOTT, baby. Surfshark also offers you a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's absolutely no risk. So why not head into the description right now and click on the link and get yourself that offer right this second. Thank you, Surfshark, for sponsoring today's video. But you can't trust Pep to stand still, can you? Pep's plan to destroy Liverpool and Arsenal may be on the horizon here.
It's simple. We kill
Liverpool and Arsenal.
I want to look at one signing in particular when it comes to this conspiracy theory, let's say. But, time and again, Pep has wiggled people about, hasn't he? So a signing that has been seen as good business for Manchester City, but also a signing that may be getting viewed incorrectly. Mateo Kovacic. Many are viewing him as a direct replacement for Gundogan due to his stature and how he looks on the ball stylistically. But people are forgetting that Gundogan scored 11 goals in all competitions last season. Meanwhile, Kovacic has only scored 5 league goals since leaving Inter Milan in 2015. So this is how it could destroy Arsenal and Liverpool, because due to Kovacic not necessarily aligning perfectly with what Gundogan offered for goal threat, this could be the first hint towards Pep changing styles again next season. After laying down a treble-winning blueprint last season and inviting the Premier League to try and copy it, he may already have devised a counter-plan to the very system that he created. So he could end up using an 8 to destroy his system that was centered around 8s. Pep's up to something, I'm telling you. And I think there could be radical changes on the horizon once again. Can you just give us a minute to catch up, please, Pep? He's so meta. Look, maybe I'm being a little bold here, but with KDB's hamstrings looking like they have aged considerably over the last few years, Pep may start looking for ways to enable the team to breathe without him. So the signing of Kovacic also suggests that the Eights may not have as much of a goal-scoring focus next season. Kovacic is naturally a deeper player than Gundogan. This isn't necessarily a bad thing either. With Kovacic sitting deeper, it could mean that Manchester City move to a two-striker formation as Pep looks to increase Alvarez's playing time in what will be his second season at the club after a very impressive first one, but obviously as a replacement and not an integral starter. So we could see the 3-2-5 formation scrapped in exchange for the 3-diamond-3 formation. With Kovacic deeper, it could be a way for Manchester City to put Phil Foden at the tip of the diamond and allow him to fulfill his true potential as a 10. Severe vibes. But when Man City are totally dominant of possession, we could still see shades of the 3-2-5 return, with Foden moving into that left-hand sided half space, with Kovacic operating parallel to him on the right. So why this season will be the season of the 8? This season will be the season of the 8, but there are huge knock-on effects for 9s, 10s and 6s, which could massively hamper individuals next season. But who are they and how will they be affected? Well, Bruno Fernandes, to start with. We know by now that Bruno Fernandes is one of, if not the most important player from an attacking perspective at Manchester United. We also know he does his best work as a classic 10, but if Mount comes in as a modern 8 with duties that involve working in the half spaces and being a creative fulcrum, it means that Bruno will have to do the same for his side to achieve that balance. How Arsenal played last season with Xhaka and Odegaard, for example. But will taking Bruno away from that true 10 role hamper his output on the whole? It's going to be interesting to see, but it will have an effect on his movements, positioning, and possibly his goal scoring too. Sticking with Bruno's, what about Bruno Guimaraes? Does Newcastle's emphasis and importance on 8 take away from Bruno Guimaraes or add to him? Could the Hollywood of being an 8 take away from how we value players like Guimaraes who excel in deeper positions? I know Newcastle United fans won't, and I won't either. But with next season gearing towards being the year of the 8, players like Guimaraes may be forgotten about along the way, or at least just sort of underappreciated. Gabriel Jesus is another one that's going to be affected here. I think the playstyles of players like Gabriel Jesus could be severely impacted, and here's why. With Arsenal now looking to play 2 extremely attacking 8s who see a lot of the ball in the final third, it means that having a focal point or a penalty box striker becomes essential for chance creation. This means that Gabriel Jesus peeling into wide areas becomes unnecessary and actually a potential hindrance to the goal. This could take away from Gabriel Jesus' preferred way of playing or make him obsolete in their way of playing. It could also simultaneously mean that an old-fashioned 9 who doesn't interact too much with play becomes fashionable once again, and it rejuvenates the careers of players who had been sort of cast aside for lacking that technical ability in the build-up play. This could elevate the perception of the likes of Awani, Mitrovic, Danny Ings, Darwin Núñez as well. Darwin Núñez could be one of the biggest beneficiaries of all of this. With no pressure to be involved in the build-up play because of Szoboszlai, he could thrive next season. He really, really could, working as a penalty box 9. Harry Kane, conversely, could be one of the victims for one big reason. He won't see as much of the ball. Kane is a player who always drops deep to work as a false 9 at times during that build-up, but that could be to his detriment with next season's emphasis being on those 8s. In fact, I have a whole video on Ange Ball and how they would play, and we talk about how it could be a difficult one for Harry Kane's style of play. But if he stays at Spurs, he'll no doubt score goals, but it could be a career low in terms of touches per 90 and the amount of times he receives the ball. So the season of 8s will no doubt have victims, victors, and breed new stars as well, but it could also have wide-scale repercussions within the Premier League, but also in Europe. With the Premier League being the first league to adopt 8s with such intensity, it could lead to a wide-scale culture shift across Europe. But on the other hand, it could go up in flames and be a contained fire within the Premier League that sees teams from abroad punish the Premier League know-it-all teams in the continental competitions. With such a big revolution on the horizon, it means that the aftermath is going to be extensive. There's no getting away from it. Something as big as this will have consequences. Or not. What do I know?